you. Boy, you got, ooh-wee.
The Rules Committee will come to order. I will make a note when we have a quorum present, but Ms. Slaughter has very, very graciously, as always, agreed to allow us to proceed with the hearing portion for consideration of H.R. 1229 and H.R. 1230. We're very happy to welcome the distinguished chair of the Committee on Natural Resources, our former Rules Committee colleague, Mr. Hastings, and without objection, as you know very well, we will include any prepared statement you have in the record. We welcome your summary.
Well, thank you very much, and this is my first opportunity back here after the 2010 elections. It's changed a little bit. There are new pictures, new colors. It's very nice, and I note you have cameras in here. Both of my committee rooms have cameras also, so I think that's a good, very good. And some things never change, though. See, some things never change here where everybody gets to have an opportunity to say something, and that's what's great about the rules.
And you see that they do.
I do, they do. Well, thank you for scheduling a hearing on H.R. 1229, the Putting the Gulf Back to Work Act, and H.R. 1230, the Restarting America Offshore Leasing Act now. These bills are necessary to reverse the Obama administration's anti-energy actions. They're necessary because we need to lower gasoline prices, create jobs, expand American energy production, and strengthen our national security by having less dependence on foreign energy sources. H.R. 1229 would allow thousands of people to return to work following the Obama administration's slow walking of drilling permits in the Gulf of Mexico. The legislation requires the Interior Department to act on drilling permits within 30 days, allowing for two 15-day extensions. This firm timeline is not a requirement that a permit be approved. It sets a deadline to ensure that a yes or no answer is given and to ensure that the Obama administration cannot oppose a moratorium through deliberate inaction. It also improves safety by reforming the law in two important ways, and this is important. First, it requires in law that a permit to drill must be issued before a new well can be drilled. Such a permit is not currently a requirement in law. Second, the Secretary is required to conduct a safety review before permitting such a permit. Again, this is a new safety reform that is not in current law. H.R. 1230 would require the Interior Secretary to conduct lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico and offshore Virginia that were delayed or canceled by the Obama administration. Due to this administration's actions, 2011 may be the first year since 1958 that the federal government may not hold an offshore lease sale. While the administration has recently indicated it might move forward with one lease sale in the Gulf, this legislation is vital to hold their feet to the fire and to ensure that we continue to expand and not restrict American energy production. Finally, recent polls show that bipartisan support for increased offshore drilling. And both these bills were favorably reported by the Natural Resources Committee on a bipartisan basis. I think these bills are just what the American people want, less reliance on foreign energy and more American energy. So thank you very much for scheduling a hearing on these two bills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hastings. We're happy to have you, and let me say that we do have a quorum present now, and the quorum obviously was established by virtue of the fact that everyone wanted to hear the brilliance coming from the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Natural Resources, Mr. Markey. And so, without objection, any prepared remarks that you have will appear in the record in their entirety, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Slaughter, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify regarding a proposed rule for consideration of H.R. 1229 and H.R. 1230, two measures which are sponsored by Chairman Hastings regarding drilling in the outer continental shelf. At the outset, the committee should be aware that consideration of these measures by the House is unnecessary. After a justifiable pause in offshore drilling in the aftermath of the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster, the Obama administration has resumed permitting offshore drilling at roughly the same pace as before this bill and is moving forward with new leasing as well. Given the enormously important issues competing for limited floor time consideration of measures requiring the administration to undertake activity it is already undertaking may not be the best use of our time. Should the majority determine to proceed, I would urge this committee to provide separate rules governing consideration of these bills by the House. By introducing and reporting H.R. 1229 and H.R. 1230 as standalone bills, it was clearly the intent of the sponsor and the Natural Resources Committee that these measures be considered independently. It is my understanding that the committee is considering a single rule for both bills as a procedural maneuver necessitated by the fact that H.R. 1229 would increase direct spending by $6 million in violation of cut-go requirements. While a final determination is clearly up to this committee, I would respectfully suggest that a more appropriate remedy would be to simply remove those sections of 1229 which increase the deficit, thus allowing the bills to move separately. Given that cut-go rules will be stringently enforced against the amendments filed to these measures, it seems equitable to apply the same rules to the underlying bills. And finally, I would urge the committee to consider a rule allowing consideration of as many amendments as possible to these two measures. I obviously believe that the two amendments I have filed are meritorious, but there are many others which also deserve consideration by the House. H.R. 1229 and 1230 are the first bills dealing with offshore drilling offered by the majority following the BP spill. And in my view, they increase the likelihood of a similar disaster. Given the scope of the danger posed to lives and livelihoods in the Gulf region and in the Mid-Atlantic, should H.R. 1230 be enacted, members deserve the opportunity for robust consideration of a variety of alternatives. Again, thank you for allowing me to testify.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Markey. Appreciate it. And let me say that is we do share the same goal in ensuring that there is a free-flowing debate. And with the litany of amendments that have been submitted, I hope very much that we'll have an opportunity to do that. I have no questions. Ms. Slaughter.
Welcome back, Mr. Hastings.
Well, thank you very much. I
See you.
appreciate that.
Both of you gentlemen, isn't it true that there's already multi-millions of acres of land, public land that's already given out for drilling, already approved for drilling, and tell me why the oil companies are not doing it? Is it because they don't have enough refinery capacity or they just don't want to?
Neither. First of all, in drilling for oil and natural gas, you never know what you have until you start drilling. The technology of enhancing the opportunity to get something is getting better all the time, but you never know until you drill. And right now, about 2 out of 3 wells that are drilled come up empty. And so when somebody has a lease, for example, to go out and drill, they will take all the activity, seismic activities and whatever, to make a determination whether they should drill. And at the same time, they are paying money for that opportunity. The federal government benefits by that. For example, opening these leases that's embodied in 1230, $40 million will come to the federal government just on the permits alone. So my point is you never know what's there until you have an opportunity to drill. And that's the determination, of course,
But
every
that's
company.
true in any case, is it not?
Pardon me?
That's true in any case. You never know what you're
Of
going
course
to
it
get
is.
when
I
you
mean,
drill.
there's an economic.
What my question was, Mr. Hastings, was that since so much public land, I can't remember the number, 79 million acres, I believe, is the pit number, that has already been leased out by the federal government to oil companies and is already ready for drilling.
Right.
And my question is, since the same thing applies, they don't know what they're going to get until they drill, why don't they drill where they already have leases and permits to do it?
Because the activity may not say there's anything there, and you don't know until you drill. There's a huge expense involved with this. And the companies, to make an investment, you have to have some certainty. As a matter of fact, a future bill that I hope will be in front of this committee focuses on that, where we are suggesting that the administration, any administration, should offer lease sales where we know there is potential resources. That's a departure from where we are
My
right now.
understanding is that some of those are absolutely known to contain oil. Is that correct, Mr. Markey?
That is correct. The Department of Interior has determined that there are 11 billion barrels of oil under those 79,000 acres that you referred to, 79 million acres, rather. By the way, that represents an area just slightly larger than the state of New Mexico. So what's happened here is the oil industry has bid for these public lands owned by the taxpayers. And the bid for it saying, we want to drill for the oil. Now they have the land. And they are not, in fact, drilling on it. And so there's a reason to believe that they're holding back on the drilling to keep the price of oil artificially high. And at the same time that they're doing that, they're saying, let us buy some more land. And I think that you're raising a very good point, because with 11 billion barrels of oil estimated by the Department of Interior, USGS, under that land, we're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of tankers of oil under American land, owned by the American taxpayer that the oil companies have now warehoused and they're not bringing online.
They have
As
their
they're
own
asking
reserve,
to drill,
would you say?
But,
They
and
have
and
their
I
own
think they
reserve?
should drill, baby, drill on that land,
Yeah.
rather than just keeping it off the market and saying, please let us buy even more American land, but without the safety standards recommended by the special BP commission that investigated what went wrong with safety in the Gulf of Mexico.
What do your
Let-
studies,
let-
both
let-
of
let
you,
me-
what, just, if-
Let me point out
of
something
course.
here, because you should understand these lease sales do have a time limit. They're either 5 years or 10 years. That's negotiated. So in essence, with current law right now, you have a situation where a company, if they choose not to drill, then they have lost their lease. I mean, that's an economic decision they have to make. It's either 5 or 10 years. They may decide that it is not economically feasible to pull the oil or gas out of these drills, and that's the reason they don't. That's why the third bill that we have, hopefully be coming next week, says that the new administration, any administration, this one and future administrations, should offer lease sales where we know there are proven resources.
But they
That's
have.
drilling smarter, better than the other way around.
your experience, both of you experienced in this, what do you believe is the reason why we have such low refining capacity? Is that, you mentioned keeping the prices up. Do you believe that that's part of that as well? Do you, Mr.?
No, I don't at all. I think it's probably more regulatory than anything else. I think we haven't built a refinery in this country, and we don't have jurisdiction under that, so I know that
understand.
the Energy and Commerce Committee has jurisdiction on that. But we haven't built a refinery in this country for some 30 years. Now, we've updated refineries, but the reason why, I think very simply, is the regulations to do that, it just simply doesn't pencil out, and that's why refineries are built elsewhere. We're importing, for goodness sakes, 20% of our refined product right now. What does that do to our national security? And I alluded to that in my opening statement about a national security issue. What does that do if we see the volatility in the Mideast and North Africa when we are sitting on potential resources here that we're not using? And these bills address that.
I hope it makes us want to do alternative fuels.
The oil industry has shut down a lot of its refining capacity here in our country over the last 20 years, just because they wanted to be more efficient. Okay, it's not that anyone made them shut it down; they just wanted to be more efficient. They thought these smaller and older facilities just didn't work, and they've expanded at other locations, as the chairman pointed out. So there isn't, some conspiracy here. It's actually, in many instances, just a corporate decision to shut down these refineries because they think they can make more money by importing it. Okay, but it's not that anyone made them shut it down here. They just did it themselves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bishop.
I don't have any questions. I'm just fascinated by the spin I'm hearing here. Fortunately, I was also from Don. Well, I'll
Thanks for asking.
assume who it is, but fortunately, I was also hearing the West Coast bills as well. So I don't have any questions.
Mr. Gower.
Just a few quick questions. Do you favor an open rule for consideration of these bills?
Well, you know how I feel, having served on this committee, but I feel in this case a structured rule is appropriate, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because there are some CUTCO issues that need to be addressed. I think the only way you can really address that is by having a structured rule, so you can find out, in fact, if they meet the rules of the House. These are the rules of the House.
No, it's amazing. I've yet to have any chairman come up here and say that they're for an open rule. So you're being consistent.
Well, no, I mean, I think that, I mean, my experience, and I served with you a number of years, you know my feeling on it, but there is some, because of the nature of these bills, there is some cut-go rules that have to be dealt with, and you can't do your work unless you can look at that and find out exactly how they comply with House rules. I think that's important, and I think a structured rule. Now, I don't have any problem if there are germane rules. I think we should debate those issues. I've always felt that way.
We're not for an open rule. The other thing, just on HR 1229, I mean, look, in light of the BP catastrophe last year, you know, it just strikes me as astonishing that anyone in Congress thinks it's a good idea to roll back safety and environmental protections for oil drilling. I mean, why force the understaffed Department of Interior to rush safety and environmental reviews? And I mean, I think if anything, people want us to be, you know, doubly cautious. And yet, you know, I'm sure there's a spin why you don't believe it's weakening the environmental oversight. But it seems to me that any fair reading of it, you do.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sure.
To my dear friend from Massachusetts, you apparently did not hear my testimony, because in 1229 we put in law for the first time a safety review of any permit, put in law for the first time, that would address an event that would happen like BP.
I put an arbitrary 30 to 60 day deadline, you know, on a DOI review of permit applications, automatically approving applications if DOI doesn't say anything after 60 days, even if safety and environmental reviews aren't done. The bill also allows permit applicants to use old, outdated environmental impact statements.
No, we are putting, right now, I want to repeat, right now, on the safety aspect of it, that is done by regulation only. We are requiring that by law. And I will give you, we had a hearing down in the Gulf 2 weeks ago in one of those areas that was affected. The President's Commission report that Mr. Markey alluded to, they had some good points in there, and one of them is that the industry needs to be more aggressive and be in a part in case there's another event like BP. And so we had testimony down there. Again, this was roughly a year after our last event. And there are two industry groups, at least that testified in front of us, saying that they are now, they feel that they can respond to any event. And so I ask a very direct question, and I'll be more than happy to provide you the testimony given. But I said, in an event there is an event like BP, how quickly do you think the industry could respond to that and affect the closure of whatever it is? And obviously, there's got to be some flexibility because you never know how a leak would come about. In both cases, they said they could probably do that in less than 3 weeks, which is a far, far cry from where we were before. So I think we are responding to those contingencies.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, somewhat reassuring. I'm trying to get to the point where you don't even have to have them respond to a BP crisis, and that's my concern.
And thank you. And one of the amendments that I'm asking to have put in order would be to implement the recommendations of the BP Spill Commission that Administrator Riley, George Bush's EPA administrator, and Senator Graham from Florida put together with a commission, and, you know, looking at what the flaws were. As you know, in the United States, we have 4 times the fatalities in our offshore drilling than European countries. We have the lowest safety record, you know, in the world. So I'm afraid that what this bill is going to do is, you know, truncate the time that we have to actually ensure that, you know, the Department of Interior or other agencies can look at the application, as you're saying, before it's deemed to be approved, just because, you know, time elapsed, even though the safety wasn't built in, much less implementing the BP Spill Commission recommendations as well, which I think makes a lot of sense. So we should be number one in drilling and number one in safety. Okay? We should not be behind all these countries in the world in our safety standards. We should be able to compete on both fronts simultaneously. Why can't we adopt the standards of, of the rest of the world for the most part, and still say we're going to drill safe. We're still going to drill more efficiently than the rest of the world. So that's one of the amendments I would ask to have be.
And just my final question is whether anyone knows, given the fact that Speaker Boehner said he's open to cutting some of these oil subsidies and tax breaks, does anyone, and we've heard, we've gone back to our districts over the last 2 weeks, people are kind of outraged that we're cutting WIC, and yet we're protecting subsidies for big oil companies that are making incredible profits while they're charging outrageous prices at the gas pump for reasons that, quite frankly, are beyond me. Does anyone have any clue when we're going to be able to have an opportunity to vote up or down on some of these oil subsidies?
Well, you probably have to, ask the leadership. I mean, I assume that the reason you ask that is because you feel the government needs to have more revenue. That's why you would want.
I put it toward deficit reduction.
Okay.
It's somewhat.
Well,
it's somewhat astonishing to the people that I represent that you're cutting programs like LIHEAP that help elderly people be able to afford fuel for their home in the winter, and then we leave untouched, these subsidies for big oil companies.
But your issue is more revenue for the government for programs.
I think people would be more understanding about some of the cuts you're making, that impact the poor if you were making some cuts that impact the rich. And so that's all I'm simply saying is I don't think we should be subsidizing industries that are making trillions of dollars in profits. And I'm looking for some fairness and as we move forward.
Well,
put it toward deficit reduction if you want. That's fine.
Right, but by your definition, if you end subsidies, you're giving more money to the federal government. Is that right?
You put the money back in, put it to a deficit reduction if you want, or pay for the wars that we're not paying for.
Would the gentleman yield for just one question, just to follow up, Mr. Hastings? If there indeed were subsidies, which sometimes are called tax credits in other areas, but is there anything in your bill that would make those type of amendments germane?
I don't think that they are germane. That's my understanding. But you're the ones that look at that, but I don't think they're germane.
I think obviously it would have to come from a committee other than resources if you're going to do those type of things. I think that would be a violation of the germaneness rules for amendments.
I think that would be the case.
Oh, thank you.
Will the gentleman further yield?
Let me finish it. I mean, you're doing some kind of fancy footwork with the rule, apparently, to kind of get around your cut-go rules. So, I mean, in this committee, the Rules Committee, as you know, can do anything and could make this germane if we wanted to. So there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. We've been trying to find an opportunity now for months to be able to address this issue, and we're always told it's not germane, it's not germane, it's not germane. We can make it germane if we want to. I yield to the gentleman.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to Mr. Hastings. In eliminating the expenditures in the tax code and the subsidies that are given to oil in the tax code, that offset can be used to reduce the overall tax rate for everybody. This doesn't have to be a revenue grab for the government. I just wanted to point out that it would have strong support from both sides of the aisle, certainly from myself, if you were to use those as a way to reduce the overall marginal income rate or the corporate rate or any rate you want to reduce.
Well, yeah, but the large principle is, I think you suggested that, is that the government would have more revenue to deal with what they see fit. Is that,
No, the government could have the same amount of revenue. We would simply, rather than picking winners and losers through our tax code, allow the free market to operate and reduce the overall tax burden, reduce the corporate rate or reduce the marginal rate.
And can I say, if I may, I thank you, that actually I have an amendment that is germane to the bill, which will save billions of dollars for taxpayers. It will require anyone that's going to bid for any new leases on public lands to have to renegotiate old leases that allow ExxonMobil and other companies to drill for free on public lands. And that will recollect billions of dollars for the taxpayers. And at $100, $110 a barrel, ExxonMobil doesn't need to be able to drill royalty-free. And so that's another amendment that I'm asking to have be put in order, because I think the members should be able to vote on that, whether or not they want to reclaim those revenues to be used for whatever purpose, deficit reduction or tax breaks for people, or to make sure that we don't have to cut grandma, back on, nursing home bed coverage if she has Alzheimer's, whatever the reason might be.
Look forward to having a chance to vote on it.
Yeah.
I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for getting here late, but I was at another meeting. Interesting comment that Mr. Markey made reference to the safety record of oil drilling in the U.S. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think it is?
Yeah.
According to the BP Spill Commission report, that there was a systemic failure across the industry, not just BP, but it was systemic, although BP was the worst. I'll stipulate that in defense of all the other companies, and they were far worse, by the way, than any other company, but that there was a systemic failure to implement kind of world-class safety standards, and they made a very strong recommendation that we move in that direction in order to ensure that we don't see a repetition of what did happen in the Gulf. So that was a culture. They basically described it as a cultural problem, kind of centered down there in the Gulf that had just been allowed permissively by our own federal government, by the way. And it was not just Democrats but Republicans, running the MMS agency down there that allowed this culture to be created. But the net result is they did all the arithmetic on the relative safety standards was that we were the worst in the world.
Doc, what are we doing to correct that issue?
Well, first of all, you're really, my understanding is you're really not comparing apples with apples.
Okay.
And the reason you're not is because we look at safety issues as the whole process of drilling. And that means from putting stuff together onshore, taking out, putting a facility in, plus all the support activity that goes back and forth between the shore and the drill. If there's an accident there, that counts against the drilling operation. Other countries don't do that. When they measure accidents, they measure it only on the site and not all the support activity. And so, obviously, if you look at our holistic approach, because there's so much more activity to it, your chance of having a higher number is greater because you're counting a whole lot of other things in the whole process rather than just on the rig. And it's from that standpoint that you're really not comparing apples with apples when you're looking at the safety records. But, I have to say, I had an opportunity to go down to the Gulf. I haven't been out on a rig. But taking a helicopter tour of seeing what they do and all the support material that supports offshore drilling, it really is quite amazing. It really is. And safety is their number one thing. They just look at it differently than other countries do, that's all.
Mr. Markey, you mentioned...
Say, we have 4 times the fatality rate of those other countries. So that is not accounted for by the different measurement scale that the chairman is mentioning. Okay, we in absolute terms have 4 times the fatality rate, and that's just the fact that kind of just jumps out at you in this BP Safety Spill Commission report.
You had mentioned Exxon Mobil in particular. Do you know what percentage of the U.S. What they represent in regards to all the oil companies? What percentage of production?
What percentage of
production, worldwide or in the U.S.?
For worldwide? Well, let me think. They are the largest corporation in the world, but and by far the largest corporation in the United States. We produce in the United States now approximately 8 million barrels of oil a day domestically. And so do you want to know what percent of that 8 million that ExxonMobil produces? Would you happen to have an idea there? The largest amount, but I don't know the specific number.
Do you know how much they pay in taxes every year?
Well, much less than they should. I'm being given a suggestion. I will say this. If you're going to tell me that they pay a lot of taxes, then I would say to you that the reason they pay a lot of taxes is that they make a lot of money, which would be the case, the argument to take away the tax breaks to go and to have them go and do what they're doing anyway and making, for all intents and purposes, windfall profits as the live. See, right now where we are is Libyan oil is 1.2 million barrels. It's been taken off the market. The Saudis decided to take 800,000 barrels off the market last month. That's 2 million barrels. So they've created an artificial shortage, which would be an antitrust violation if it happened in the United States. So all those profits go to ExxonMobil because they get this windfall profit from the global oil price. And that's just the reality that we have to stipulate. $11 billion in the first quarter, extrapolated out to $40 or $50 billion worth of profits this year. You are right. They're going to pay a lot of taxes on that. But should we be giving them another $4 billion in tax breaks to go and do something that has made them the most profitable corporation in the world? And I would say no.
Well, I would also think that, most corporations pay taxes on a quarterly basis, and what happens is you reconcile at the end of the year to determine typically what you owe and what you get back in the way of a tax credit.
Could I respond to that?
Absolutely.
After, in taxes coming into the federal government, revenue coming into the federal government, after income tax, the largest source of revenue to the federal government, single source of revenue, is royalties from activities on public land and principally offshore revenues coming from oil exploration. So, when you look at that industry supporting, the government in revenues, clearly that's a very, very large sum. And I think that needs to be part of the equation because we're running, we're running huge deficits. We all know that, and we want to get our economy moving. It seems to me the best way that we can do that long term is to give us a more stable supply of energy, and you do that with American energy. And you create American jobs, of course, which are good, high-paying jobs. And as I mentioned in my statement, there's a national security aspect because of the unrest. Why should we have to worry about a cartel allowing us to have more oil on the market when we have tremendous resources here that we can utilize? And that's what these bills attempt to do.
I have no further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a bet that Exxon does not pay the 35% corporate tax rate. I'll bet anybody in the room that that's not what they do. And if they do, they need to get rid of their accountants and lawyers. And I'm sure that they have not and will not. I know that the record speaks of who brings the matter, my dear friend, and that's the chairman, but I want to make sure that it's the Hastings from Washington that they're talking about because the Hastings from Florida will be the last person standing against offshore drilling so long as I am alive. Mr. Markey, I agree with you that we should be number one in drilling, number one in safety, but there's another number one. We should be number one in renewable energy production as well. And I ask you, Mr. Chairman, you held hearings, and am I correct that you had 8 hearings on oil and gas and no hearings on renewable resource?
We have a renewable hearing, I think, coming up this week.
Coming up.
Yeah, come on. And let me.
But ain't had none yet.
Well, listen. There's been a long-term planning process of putting all of this together. As you know, I'm in favor of all of the above energy. You've heard me say that before. But the principal focus has been, I admit, on the outer continental shelf, and mainly because the reaction of what this administration has done, principally in the Gulf of Mexico. But yes, we are going to be very aggressive in that area. So, but thank you for the question.
To be continued. The fact of the matter is you haven't had any, and you could have. But let me make a comment. These bills are going to make offshore.
To reinforce your point, if I may, in the Republican budget that passed, there was a 70% cut in the clean energy budget. Okay, so if that's the point that you're getting at, yes, there is a disparity here in terms of, tax breaks for the oil industry and yet a cut back dramatically in the renewable energy field in the Republican budget.
These bills make offshore drilling more dangerous and an oil spill more likely by opening up additional waters to offshore drilling while creating an inadequate review process for application permits. Furthermore, the bills are an irresponsible giveaway to an oil industry already taking in enormous profits straight from the American taxpayer at the gas pump. Gasoline prices in this country have increased 26% this year. The average price for gasoline is around $3.88. It's the highest price of gas that we've had since August '08, which is the very same quarter that Exxon reported the all-time highest net income for a publicly traded company of $14.8 billion. The only way we can reduce gasoline prices is to reduce the demand for fossil fuels by increasing our energy efficiency, improving the fuel mileage of our automobiles, and developing renewable energy resources. Neither increasing the speed which permits are approved nor opening up more of our shorelines to drilling will accomplish this. 29 and 30 HRs are reckless bills, in my opinion, and if acted, would ensure that the risky business of oil drilling will only get riskier. And let me say to you that these environmental impact studies that you deem adequate assume the most likely size of an offshore spill, and I'm quoting from it, greater than or equal to 1,000 barrels that is predicted to occur is 4,600 barrels of oil. The BP spill sent 4.9 billion barrels of oil into the Gulf. The old analysis also concluded that the total volume of oil that would be spilled from all spills in the central and western Gulf over the next 40 years would be roughly 47,000 barrels. Finally, these reviews concluded that in the worst case scenario, this is stuff now you say it's all right. In the worst case scenario, only 19 to 31 miles of Gulf coastline would be impacted by a spill. In reality, the Deepwater Horizon disaster resulted in oil reaching over 950 miles of the Gulf coastline, according to NOAA. I don't know how this deeming an application for drilling automatically accepted after an arbitrary time period expires makes offshore drilling safer. I don't know how increasing the speed with which the Department of Interior must review an application for a permit make a spill less likely. And answer this for me, Doc. How does making legal challenges to offshore drilling next to impossible make a spill less likely to devastate our beaches, fishing, and tourism industries, not to mention harm our health and environment?
Let me respond a couple of ways. First of all, you mentioned there's different ways that you can affect gas prices, and one you left out I think is very, very important, and that is increasing the supply of potential of crude oil to get onto the marketplace. And the fact is, within the continental United States, and I'm counting in the OCS, I'm counting in the Intermountain West, when you look at all of the potential resources, and by the way, what I'm going to say put into perspective that OPEC controls 45% of the market right now. That's a reason we have a problem, because we don't have a free market, even though it's a global commodity. But we have potential in this country alone of an excess of 2 trillion barrels equivalent of oil. When we use about 20 million barrels a day, that is a huge, huge resource. And I'm just simply saying with these bills.
Stop refining. What is this going to do to gasoline prices? You're talking about a nickel?
Look, I don't know, but I'll tell you this. I'll mention this. You remember when we had the last time gas prices were at $4 a gallon? Now, that was in 2008. At that time, there was a presidential moratorium on drilling in the OCS, and there was a congressional moratorium on drilling in the OCS. At the end of 2008, both of those went away. And part of that, I think, was a signal to the marketplace that the United States is serious about being less dependent on oil, and that sent a signal to the markets throughout the world, and gas prices came down. I suspect the same thing will happen right now, because how do you beat a cartel? Any cartel you want. I don't care what it is. You beat a cartel by increasing the supply of whatever that cartel controls.
I hear
and that's what we're trying to do here with these bills.
One thing is certain. The Hastings live in alternate universe.
Well, do I gather then that you're going to cancel my vote?
You can bet on
I
it.
can bet on it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your testimony. And we have apparently a minute left on the vote downstairs. I think there are a couple of minutes. And I see we have four witnesses here in the room. And so why don't we reconvene at the beginning of the, there are just two votes? Six votes, okay. Well, I was sort of in the right direction.
Chairman,
Let's begin, let's
Chairman,
reconvene.
Contemplating also two 15-minute motions to reconvene.
Two 15-minute votes? Okay. Well, I mean, if you all are comfortable, I mean, I'm happy to reconvene as we begin the, what would be about 25 or 30 minutes that we could have. I mean, you two are excused. But with the other witnesses who are here, we have some work to do to put the rule together itself. So why don't we recess, and as soon as we begin the 15-minute vote, then let's reconvene. Is that the third vote coming? Okay, so we'll cast two votes, and then we'll reconvene at the very beginning of the third vote. And anyone who would like to testify is welcome to come forward then. And if there's no one here when we reconvene at the beginning of the third vote, we will close the hearing and proceed to reporting out the rule. So the committee stands in recess. If you fellows are fine with our reconvening now? Without objection, the committee will reconvene, and we now have a quorum now that Mr. Reed has stepped into the room, and Mr. Polis is here as well. And we had 4 witnesses as we recessed, and now the newest member among those witnesses has come before us, the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa. We're very happy to have you, and let me say that if you have any prepared statement, without objection, it will appear in the record in its entirety, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, what I'm offering...
Why don't you come forward and join us, too, here?
What I'm offering is what I call a common sense amendment to H.R. 1229. As you know, H.R. 1229 is going to amend basically Title 42, Subchapter 3, Section 1340, which is now Subpart D, the drilling permit, which just simply reads, the Secretary may, by regulation, require any lessee operating under an approved exploration plan to obtain a permit prior to drilling any well in accordance with such plan. That's all it says. H.R. 1229 is what is proposed to be the amendment to that section. I'm offering just a simple amendment to page 4 after line 6, and I'd like the following inserted. It says, subpart 3, worst case discharge scenario certification. The Secretary shall not issue a permit under paragraph 1 without certifying that the applicant, A, has calculated a worst-case discharge scenario for the proposed drilling operations, and B, has demonstrated to the satisfaction of the Secretary that the applicant possesses the capability and technology to respond immediately and effectively to such worst-case discharge scenario. Mr. Chair, members, the reason why I believe that this is a common-sense amendment is that it addresses for the public what everyone is concerned about, and that is that we do not experience another BP spill. It leaves it up to the Secretary and the applicant to basically calculate what the worst-case scenario could possibly be, and the fact that the applicant has basically the wherewithal to address it. And this is why I believe that not only is this amendment very germane to what we are speaking to here in terms of H.R. 1229, but one that the public would like to see us do, because they want to see a very clear and concise definition of what we intend to happen in the event of a BP situation again. We don't want to see it happen again, and all that this does is says that we have taken the steps necessary to ensure that it will not happen again. And
Thank you very much, Ms. Hanabusa. Mr. Holt. That's fine.
That is on. Okay.
Everything's-
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Rules Committee. I have 3 amendments that I'd like to speak to briefly, and
Ms. Jackson-Lee, please come forward and join us here at the table. Oh, you can stay right there. Stay right there.
The first is an amendment to H.R. 1230 that, as the bill is introduced, it would deem the shoddy environmental analysis that was conducted in 2007 to be sufficient. My amendment would strike the language that deems this pre-BP spill environmental work sufficient, and the amendment would require a new environmental analysis. So just looking at some of the conclusions, and I'll run through them quickly, of the outdated environmental analysis shows the absurdity of deeming this to be sufficient. The environmental impact statement determined, quote, the most likely size of an offshore spill greater than or equal to 1,000 barrels that is predicted to occur is 4,600 barrels of oil, end quote. Yes, you heard me right. The most likely large spill, according to the environmental impact statement, that they were preparing the environmental impact statement to address, was 4,600 barrels of oil. The BP Deepwater Horizon disaster led to more than 4 million barrels released, need I remind you. In addition, the analysis concluded that the total volume of oil that would be spilled from all spills in the central and western Gulf over 40 years would be roughly 47,000 barrels of oil. The Deepwater Horizon belched that much oil into the Gulf in one day. 40 years' work. So this was the environmental impact statement that is deemed to be satisfactory for us to move forward. Says that the worst that would happen over 40 years would be less, actually, than what happened from the Deepwater Horizon in one day. The EIS said that somewhere between 19 and 31 miles of Gulf coastline might be impacted by a spill. Several dozen miles. In fact, it was about 950 miles. Furthermore, this environmental impact statement that would be deemed satisfactory determined that a deep water blowout would not present a cleanup problem because the oil would rise in the water column, surfacing almost directly over the source. In fact, we know the oil spewed from the ocean floor remained in enormous subsurface plumes spread across the Gulf, was emulsified, it broke up and went everywhere. Have we learned nothing from the largest oil spill in U.S. waters? Let's not let this bill go forward as the amnesia bill, the Amnesia Act. A second amendment, Mr. Chairman, concerns, it would require the Secretary of the Interior to have access to unbiased data on U.S. oil reserves. Consumers around the country are once again facing sharp increases in gasoline prices. This is an ostensible reason for this legislation, as you've heard from Mr. Hastings, the other Mr. Hastings from Washington State. And I think it is vital that the federal government have timely, reliable, transparent, and unbiased information on the relationship between energy and the U.S. economy and offshore drilling. And these decisions should be made using the best facts and evidence available. I was troubled in the full year continuing appropriations. The Energy Information Administration would be hampered in providing this impartial information. For this reason, I'm offering an amendment that would require the Secretary to have access to unbiased data. It's a simple requirement. It says that because we need to have sound science and unbiased analysis in order to know what we're doing and what we should be doing in offshore drilling, we must have the information in hand before we move ahead with new oil and gas drilling. I don't think that's asking too much. And this would be provided by the EIA, whose mission it is to collect, analyze, and disseminate independent and impartial energy information for the purpose of sound policymaking. A third amendment deals with the language in the bill that would add a timeline to permitting the process, to the permitting process for outer continental shelf lands. As written, it states, if the Secretary has not made a decision on the application by the end of the 60-day period, beginning on the date the application is received by the Secretary, the application is deemed approved. So, if for any reason the analysis has not been completed and the work has not been done within 60 days, for any reason whatsoever, it is deemed approved. There are a number of provisions in this bill that could make offshore drilling less safe, and this amendment is aimed at perhaps the most dangerous of those provisions. I've heard, actually, the chairman of this committee in previous years talk about the danger of deeming. Well, in this case, deeming something approved should raise eyebrows, and it calls for careful evaluation. In this case, if the provision were enacted, one of two things would happen. If the person serving as the Secretary of the Interior is committed to truly protecting the Gulf and the Gulf communities, then he or she would have no choice but to automatically reject an application. I don't think that's what the author of this bill wants. The second possibility is probably worse. If the Secretary is not particularly concerned about the Gulf or the Gulf residents, he or she might allow permits to be deemed despite not having done the work, not having fully reviewed the safety and environmental matters that go with the application. Either way, this provision should be removed from the bill. My amendment would do that, and I ask
Thank you very much.
the approval of this
Being
committee.
here. Ms. Jackson-Lee.
Thank you. I didn't want to get in front of someone. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Chairman, I would like to, we sent a letter, we had a duplicate amendment, and I wanted to make sure that I read it to the record, that I am, two identical amendments were submitted to H.R. 29. I'm sending this letter to hereby withdraw amendment number 11 and retain number 3. Let me thank you for allowing me to come and explain the amendment that I have, which will extend the initial 30-day approval period for 60 days and allow 2 additional 30-day extensions. My amendment also removes the provision that would automatically approve permit applications if a decision on the application could not be reached within a 60-day time period. This amendment strives to take the necessary time and precautions to safeguard against any potential risk to our waters while aiming to put the Gulf region back to work. As a representative for Houston and in the Gulf region, I'm committed to finding a balance that will support continued growth in the energy industry while protecting our environment. I understand the importance of putting hardworking people of the Gulf region back to work, and I believe it can be done in a good balance of safety and security with the Department of the Interior. Prohibiting the Department of the Interior from ensuring the safety of the Gulf before issuing drilling permits puts our waterways at risk. The Department of the Interior needs additional resources prior to imposing a 30-day application review period. These resources should include trained experts and specialists who can then aid in the review of these complex applications. The importance of the studied and careful review of permit applications cannot be understated. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill had a devastating effect on the entire Gulf region. 4.9 million gallons of oil poured into the Gulf of Mexico lined the coastlines of several states, harmed wildlife, and severely impacted fishing and tourism industries. I believe the energy industry of which I represent has admitted that. They understand it was a catastrophic event. We are saddened by what happened. Given the aftermath of this oil spill, it is easy to understand why those tasked with protecting the Gulf from another such disaster would want additional time and precautions before issuing permits to drill. Extending the initial period to 60 days and allowing for 30-day extensions will provide more time for a thorough approval process. In addition, eliminating the deemed would take away the stigma of deemed. We know that's not what is the appropriate process for the government to act in. In Texas and the Gulf region, the oil and gas industry supports 1.7 million jobs, approximately 25% of the state's economy, and the Gulf region, 50% of that Gulf region is involved in the production of oil and gas. It's important to note that the region is attempting to diversify in solar and wind. It's also important to note that I think we as a Congress have the responsibility to ensure that all segments of our economic life have the opportunity to grow. So I'm not afraid of deep water offshore drilling, but I am afraid of a process that does not diligently review that process and ensure that we're doing it safely and securely. To those who have sponsored this legislation, and I noted that at least the cover suggests that there is only one party on the bill, I've said to my constituents and I've said to those who represent the large energy companies, we are not going to get a defined energy policy until we begin to be speaking to both Democrats and Republicans and independents. Now that the House is in the hands of Republicans, it does not make sense to write a special interest bill. It makes sense to write a bill that will help to invest in our economy, restore the opportunity for safe and secure deep water drilling offshore, which many of our energy companies have already engaged in by organizing what we call the containment unit, where they're developing new technology. And it doesn't make sure to try to excessively take powers away from the federal government. Deemed is an excessive and I believe unhealthy use of transfer of power to an industry versus the government. So my amendment is a very straightforward amendment that gives more time for deliberation and as well takes the language out for deemed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I have a late amendment. I will talk about it very briefly. It is late. And just to say that it is an amendment that asks for more training and more staffing resources for the Department of Interior if this process of moving forward on permits will go forward. Obviously, this bill has to go to the Senate and has to get a signature by the President. And I would hope that we will not suffer in the Gulf region because we cannot strike a bipartisan compromise to create jobs and to boost this economy. With that, I ask for consideration of my amendments
Thanks to all
and the
of
one
you
on
for
training.
Very thoughtful testimony. Mr. Bishop.
Gentlelady from Hawaii, you have one amendment.
Right.
Mr. Wolf, you have
Three, actually four, but I spoke to three.
and Mr. Jackson, you have one.
I have, and one is late. Yes.
Mr. McGovern.
I just want to thank all of you for being here. I certainly support your amendments and hope that they'll be made in order. Thank you.
Mr. Woodall. Mr. Hastings. Mr. Webster.
I just had one thing, Mr. Chairman. That is, I believe that deadlines on the federal government is a good thing. And so if deemed was a final action, that would be one thing, but it's not. On day 59, if the department would just say no, they just want an answer. So say no, and there's nothing deemed. That's all they've got to do. So if they're in doubt, and it's supposedly not enough time, all they have to do is say no.
Thank you. Mr. Polis. Mr. Reed. Thanks to all of you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your,
Thank you.
testimony. And our next witness is the gentleman from Worcester, Mr. McGovern.
I'll pass it just when I offer my amendment. I'll speak to my amendment.
We will make the case for that. Okay. We have a rule here. What does that mean?
Mr. Chairman?
So apparently what we're going to do, I saw Ms. Brown here, and you spoke to her. Does she have testimony that she wanted to submit? Oh, I'm happy to recognize the gentleman from Fort Lauderdale.
To submit the statement of Ms. Brown.
Without objection, Ms. Brown's statement will be included in the record, and
There's another.
committee will, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes,
Hastings.
I have two more, Mr. Chairman. On the statement of Representative Deutsch from Florida.
Without objection, Mr. Deutsch's statement will appear.
And I have three
Who else?
amendments, Mr. Chairman, that I ask unanimous consent that my statements be.
Without
put on the
objection,
record.
Mr. Hastings' statement will appear in the record, and it's our intention to reconvene at the beginning of the last vote now, as the rule is not quite ready, but we'll be ready in, how soon until we have the rule there, Mr.? Okay, so we'll reconvene at the beginning of the last vote then. So the committee stands in recess. You all got your amendments, and Paul, are you ready to go here, Jim? Yep. Okay. The Rules Committee will reconvene. We will now move to the markup on the rule that will allow for consideration of H.R. 1229 and 1230, and the chair will be in receipt of a motion. Gentleman from Dallas.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee report one rule for consideration of both H.R. 1229, the Putting the Gulf of Mexico Back to Work Act, and H.R. 1230, the Restarting American Offshore Leasing Now Act. The rule provides for consideration of H.R. 1229 under a structured process. The rule provides one general hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the amendment recommended by the Committee on Natural Resources now printed in the bill shall be considered as adopted. The rule waives all points of order against provisions of the bill as amended. The rule makes an order only those amendments to H.R. 1229 printed in Part A of the Rules Committee report accompanying the resolution. The rule provides that each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report and may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, and shall not be subject to amendment, shall not be subject to demand for division of the question. All points of order against the amendment are waived. The rule provides one motion to recommit the bill with or without instruction. The rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 1230, the Restarting American Offshore Leasing Now Act, under a structured process. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill. The rule makes an order only those amendments to H.R. 1230 printed in Part D of the report. The rule provides that all and each such amendments may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by the member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, shall not be subject to an amendment, shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. All points of order against amendments are waived. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Finally, the rule directs the clerk to, in the engrossment of H.R. 1230, await the disposition of H.R. 1229 and to add the text of H.R. 1229 as passed by the House as new matter at the end of H.R. 1230.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just briefly explain that we have made all of the amendments that have been made in order are Democratic amendments, and most of the amendments that are not made in order, whether non-germane or non-compliant with cut-go, and there are 11 to H.R. 1229 and 2 amendments to H.R. 1230. So if there are any additional amendments, Mr. Hastings.
I have an
Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move to amend the rule so that immediately after adoption of the rule by the House, we consider a bill consisting of the text of my amendment, number 1, submitted to H.R. 1230, and that we give the bill an open rule.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Any further discussion?
I'd like to just,
Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Chairman, my amendment is simple. It eliminates subsidies for oil companies. While I don't agree with the underlying bills, my amendment doesn't stand in the way of consideration of these bills at all. In fact, my motion makes my amendment in order as a standalone bill. The Speaker of the House, and I'd like to ask unanimous consent that be inserted in the record, the interview that says Boehner opens door to
without objection will be included in the record.
The Speaker of the House, the Chairman of the Budget Committee, and many others, including some on this committee, have said to me that they agree with me that subsidies for big oil companies should be rescinded. Yet we can't seem to quite ever get a vote on this. Oil company profits are rising at the same time that gas prices are skyrocketing. ExxonMobil's profits for the first 3 months of this year rose by 69% over last year. They made a profit of $10.7 billion in the first 3 months of 2011, and the American taxpayers are paying nearly $4 a gallon for gasoline. It's not just Exxon. I mean, I go right down the list. Oxy, Conoco, Chevron, BP, made billions and billions of dollars in the first quarter of the year. So give me a break, everybody. Ending subsidies for corporations that are making money hand over fist while gouging Americans shouldn't be controversial. And again, I've heard Republicans say that they agree that we need to go after these subsidies. And yet, every time we offer an amendment, I'm told we can't have it. Now, I'm asking this be brought up as a standalone bill. This does nothing to prevent your drilling bills from moving forward. If you want to do that, you go right ahead and you have the votes, but let us have a vote on ending oil subsidies.
You've heard the gentleman's motion. Let me just say in response, obviously, the proposals that we've been working on as we deal with tax issues is to, when it comes to job creators in this country, diminish the number of both subsidies and exemptions that exist. We want to reduce the top rate on those job creators from 35% to 25%. And I do believe that an opportunity to look very closely at the proposal that my friend has is something that is worthy of consideration. It just all of a sudden on a bill that does not relate to this issue at all. This is, let me just complete my thought if I might, and then I'll be very happy to yield. Then I believe that the opportunity to consider that is something that is worthy, and I'm going to urge a no vote on the amendment. And let me just recognize the gentleman who I think wanted to.
Yeah, again, I think this bill is excellent. I particularly appreciate the gentleman from Massachusetts bringing it forward under an open rule. I would then be happy to introduce an amendment on the floor to use the revenues to reduce the corporate tax rate. Our corporate tax rate in this country is too high at 35% by global standards, and I'll work with the gentleman in the committee, the Ways and Means Committee, to help figure out what a revenue neutral level would be. But I would be hopeful that this would allow us to bring the corporate tax rate down, hopefully into the 20s, which I think would help make American businesses more competitive and create jobs.
For that, and I'm happy to yield.
No, and I thank the Chairman. And again, I'm hoping that we can get more than a promise that you will look closely at this proposal.
Let me reclaim my time, and what I will say to my friend is obviously committees of jurisdiction need to be brought into the mix on this. This Congress has been meeting for, 3.5 months, and to say, well, we've been saying that you want to do this, why isn't it done yet? Well, there are lots of things that we say we want to do, and I will say that I believe that there is an opportunity for us to look very closely at those provisions, and I appreciate the encouragement that my friend is providing in that effort. I'm happy to further yield.
Just one final point. I mean, this is the exact same language that I've introduced before, so this is not new, number one. And number two, again, as I said earlier, there's just something wrong and unfair about a process that cuts programs like LIHEAP to help senior citizens pay for their oil in the winter, and at the same time allow these tax breaks and these subsidies to continue. And so here's an opportunity. Let's just have this vote.
I appreciate that, and I know we had 4 years of a Democratic majority here, and I don't remember our being in a position where these kinds of measures were considered either in this committee or on the House floor. The vote occurs on the McGovern amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me.
I was calling for the vote here, Mr. Woodall.
Could I ask? I don't know. Is it a germane amendment? Was the parliamentarian rule this amendment?
No, but as you know, Mr. Woodall, in the Rules Committee, we waive germaneness rules. It's not.
I think Mr. Woodall may have yielded to you. The vote occurs on the amendment of the gentleman from Worcester. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
Aye.
Those have it. Clerk, you want to record it?
Yeah, record a vote.
Clerk, report the total of the vote. Call the roll.
Mr. Sessions?
No.
Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox?
No.
Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall?
No.
Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent?
No.
Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Mr. Reed?
No.
Mr. Reed, no. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis?
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. Clerk, report the total.
On that, there were 3 yeas and 9 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before I offer this next amendment, I just want to clarify for the record, the gentleman, Mr. Woodall, raised the issue of germaneness. The amendment that I proposed would have allowed this to come up as a separate bill. So the issue of germaneness wouldn't apply here. So that just want the record to be clear. I wasn't asking that this be amended. I was asking that we have a separate bill made in order.
Well, if the gentleman yield, I will say, obviously, we're not here considering that measure, which obviously, being a strong institutionalist, I know that my friend would very much want the committees of jurisdiction to have an opportunity to look at a proposal as sweeping as this. I thank my friend for yielding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee make an order and provide any necessary waivers for amendment number 10 to H.R. 1230, offered by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, which would require that companies bidding on new leases in the bill first renegotiate any royalty-free leases they own. This amendment would raise more than $2 billion over 10 years.
Heard the motion of the gentleman. Any further discussion? If not, the vote occurs on the McGovern amendment. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Paying the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions?
No.
Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox?
No.
Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall?
No.
Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Mr. Reed?
No.
Mr. Reed, no. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis?
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. Clerk will report the total.
On that, there were 3 yeas, 9 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. There are further amendments. Mr.
Yes,
Hastings.
please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee make an order and provide any necessary waivers for my amendment, number 5, to H.R. 1230, which would require the governor of each state potentially affected by an oil spill to specifically consent to the relevant lease sale before drilling and exploration activities can commence. This is a states' rights measure, and the states that are generally affected are Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, all for the moment have Republican governors, but it would just seem to me that the state ought to have some say through its leadership. Thank you,
Gentlemen. Vote occurs on the Hastings amendment. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Paying the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The motion is agreed to. Are there further amendments? Mr. Polis.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee grant H.R. 1229 and H.R. 1230 open rules.
Heard the motion of the gentleman.
I may
Any
speak to it.
discussion? If not, the vote. We understand, I think, the case for the open rule, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was, of course, very disappointed that Mr. McGovern's bill is not included in this rule. I was very hopeful that would provide us the opportunity to provide some tax relief to the American people and reduce taxes, as I would have brought that forward under an open rule on the floor. But I think the next best thing would be to give members of the House the opportunity to bring forward various amendments for these bills under the rule. I know the gentleman from California frequently mentioned in my first term I never had the opportunity to see an open rule. I've just would like to remind him that I've still never seen an open rule in my time here in Congress, and if not on this bill, I hope to see it soon on a bill.
Let me just say that I think that the 90 hours of debate that we had on the continuing resolution with 200 amendments being considered under a modified open structure was, and I say I should remind my friends that it was an open rule based on the definition that was provided in the 111th Congress. We went back to the tradition of saying a modified open rule which allowed any member to offer a germane amendment as long as it was printed in the congressional record was an open amendment process, and we did allow that. And I will say that I'm looking forward to the appropriations process which is going to take place in the not-too-distant future. And also I want to say that on both of these bills, all of the amendments that we've made in order have been made are Democratic amendments, and they're the ideas that members testified here. And frankly, those of us who served in the 111th Congress on the Rules Committee and those who served in the House in the 111th Congress know that that was not quite the case there. So I'm going to urge a no vote on the amendment. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those no. Pay the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it.
Mr. Chair, roll call, please.
Mr. Sessions? Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott? No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Mr. Reed? No. Mr. Reed, no. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis?
Aye.
Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. Clerk report the total.
3 yeas, 9 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Mr. Sessions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in my previous motion, I need to amend that and would ask unanimous consent to do that.
Without objection.
I moved to amend the rule in Section 3 to switch the numbers 1230 and 1229. Therefore, the clerk would add the text of H.R. 1230 as a new matter at the end of H.R. 1229.
Okay. And so this is simply conforming then with direction of the parliamentarian. So without objection, is there any opposition to the gentleman's motion? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Aye. Sure, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The vote now occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Sure, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Aye. Mr. Sessions, aye. Ms. Fox. Aye. Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Woodall. Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Nugent. Aye. Mr. Nugent, aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, aye. Mr. Reed. Aye. Mr. Reed, aye. Ms. Slaughter. Mr. McGovern.
No.
Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings. No. Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis. No. Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye. Clerk, report the total.
On that, there were 9 yeas, 3 nays.
And the motion is agreed to, and this will be managed for the Republicans by the gentleman from Brigham City, Utah, Mr. Bishop.
And Mr. Polis will.
And Mr. Polis, gentleman from Boulder, Mr. Polis will be managing for the Democrats. Thank you all very much. That should complete our work for the week. And without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you all very much.